Welcome back to Ask the Compound, where our audience is getting smarter. It's kind of like the alien in the movie, you know, where it's like evolving over time and getting smarter. They know how to ask questions to pull my little heartstrings. They know which questions I'm going to answer. So we got some today that I swear it's like the Ben AI chatbot. Like, we know what Ben's going to pick here. Because
if you start off with love you guys, you've immediately got my attention, you know?
So we have a doc full of, 100 questions still we haven't gotten to. We try to get to them all, but we get new ones every week, and then we have the old ones, and some of them we got some good ones this week. So askthecompoundshow@gmail.com if you want to email us. This morning in my email inbox, I got a January financial report from Rocket Money, who's the sponsor of the show today. So how much I spent last month, the percentage change from what I normally spend, the largest transaction, which I think was plane tickets maybe, and the percentage of income that I spent, right? Here's your income, how much you brought in, here's how much you spent as a percentage, and it also shows the biggest category changes in spending. So travel, shopping, eating out, etc. Was it higher or lower from the month before? Pretty cool. So Rocket Money is the personal finance app that lets you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, helps you lower your bills. 5 million users on Rocket Money, and it's saved members an average of $720 a year, over $500 million in canceled subscriptions. It's even more money than I've saved on my cable bill over time. Stop wasting money on the things that you don't use. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions by going to rocketmoney.com/ATC for Ask the Compound. That's rocketmoney.com/ATC. Click the link on YouTube.
I love Rocket Money.
Duncan, everyone wanted to know why you're not wearing a suit today. Duncan and I were at the New York Stock Exchange the other day, and he put me to shame because he wore a suit and tie. I walk into the office, I'm wearing a sweater and a nice, I don't wear a tie anymore. I gave up on it in COVID. I just decided ties I think I threw them all away.
You looked very fashionable.
I had a sport coat on, but you put me to shame because people thought you worked on Wall Street. No hat, you had your hair slicked back. Very nice.
Thanks. Yeah, my hair was probably not very dressy, but yeah. My wardrobe is binary. I have like flannels and then I have a suit. So it's like I don't really have many in-betweens.
Extremes.
It's it's either I'm dressed up or I'm not dressed up.
It's like my portfolio. It's a barbell.
It is funny, though. Someone on the train started talking to me the whole way back about equity swaps, for real. So I looked to the part, I guess, you know?
Yes. Lehman Brothers or something. All right. Questions?
Yeah. Oh, first, before we dive into that, I was going to say a little cross-promotion. Everyone should check out Ben's blog, A Wealth of Common Sense. I've loved this thing you wrote, 17 Thoughts About Money. I just wanted to share a couple of them that I thought were really good. The second one, you have money can't buy happiness is something only rich people say. So true.
People with money say that.
Right, yes. Exactly. People always say that. And I mean, what they mean is money's not going to be the thing that makes you happy. Just having
it's not going to fill a hole, but
right, and that's true. But yeah, like only wealthy people say
it can make your life a lot easier, though.
Right. No one's happy when they're worried about how they're going to pay their next bill or
exactly
that kind of thing. The other one I really liked was true money contentment comes from accepting people dumber than you will be richer than you. That, you just have to get over that. Sometimes people are going to make a bunch of money on some cryptocurrency that you missed, and you just have to kind of be okay
Circumstances,
with
luck, whatever it is, you can't let that grate at you because it's like the thing, someone's always going to be smarter than you. I always say that about investing. The same thing it's like the opposite with money is there's someone dumber than you. Like, how is that person so much richer than me? And guess what? You just have to live with it. It happens.
Yeah, it's life. And then I also like number 8, most problems that can be solved using money aren't real problems. And you go on to say how it's nothing compared to like a health scare or things like that.
That's stuff that really put it into perspective.
Yeah.
Yes,
and then,
I agree.
Then last but not least, I really loved the number 16. People who act like they have it all figured out are usually full of shit.
That's true.
Most people would agree with that. So yeah, good list.
Yes, because the truth is no one has it figured out.
Right.
Even I don't care how well versed you are, how smart you are, no one has it all figured out.
Very true. Good post though. I like that.
Appreciate it. All right, let's do a question.
All right, up first today we have a question from David. We wanted to start investing in a college account for our new granddaughter with regular deposits. Is 60/40 the best approach for a college account? That's what we would do on Reflex, but wanted to get your thoughts. Sounds simple, but if that's the answer, what's in the 60 and what's in the 40? And should it be passive or actively managed in some way like simple rebalancing annually? And this actually raised a question I was going to follow up with you on. Is it considered active if you just rebalance annually?
No, that's part of your allocation.
Okay.
I mean, whatever. Every decision is active if you want to really split hairs here. But I love where David's head is at here. I'm not going to lie. I gave some not so subtle hints to my parents and the in-laws that, hint, hint, wink, wink. you don't have to buy toys all the time. We can also do 529 contributions, and that was made clear. And it's very easy, actually. The Michigan 529 plan makes it easy for someone to gift a 529 contribution. And obviously, I have 3 kids. Putting them through college is not going to be cheap. Plus, we have twins who will be attending at the same time. And I think my oldest daughter will be a senior when the twins are freshmen. So we'll have 3 kids in college at the same time. And the grandparents have come through. Our provider at Michigan, they have a bunch of different investment options. Now, you can pick those investment options yourself, which is easy. Some people just pick a simple total stock market index. Ours is mostly index funds. A lot of it depends on what state you're from. So I would first check with your own children to see if they have a 529 plan set up in the first place. Maybe they've already made elections for investment options. But if not, we all know I'm a big target date fund guy, right? We practice what we preach here in the compound. I invest in index funds and target date funds. Duncan invests in stocks that fall 98%. Sometimes. Now,
sometimes go up too. Sometimes go up too.
That's true. Depends when you start. So the Michigan 529 plan has these investment options that are based on the year the child will be starting school, and it's just a target date fund. And so I looked at the Michigan options, and they range from like 80-20 to like 20-80. And I looked at the one for my daughter. She's going to be 10 this year, which is mind-boggling. This is something all parents have to say. Like, I can't believe how quickly the time went. It's also true. And I think hers is 60-40, and it's a mix of U.S. stocks, international stocks, REITs, TIPS, total bond market fund, and corporate bonds. So it's pretty well diversified. It rebalances automatically, and it also has the glide path where it slowly gets more conservative as you get closer to the age. So I like that option that it just does it for me. So it's an active thing, but it's got the glide path. You could always make it more risky if you wanted to go further out, like pick a year that's further away, more conservative if you want to pick a year that's closer. But that's the thing for me that would be easiest. So you don't have to get in there and tinker, especially if it's going to be for your granddaughter. You don't want to be like, try to actively manage this. That way, when they're there, she's at college age, it's going to be relatively conservative so the money's there to be spent. So I like that option. But yeah, talk to your kids first. It's not the perfect option, of course. You could say, well, there's ways to do better. But the beauty of it is it's automated, it's simple, it's well diversified. Michigan probably has a top quartile 529 plan, so I would check which state you're in or your granddaughter's in to make sure they have similar offerings. But that's what I do, and I think it's easy. That's the big part of it to me.
I didn't realize that they changed state by state.
Yeah, depending on this, which kind of stinks. They should have the same all over. But Morningstar does these rankings where they do like gold, silver, bronze, I don't know, coal for the worst ones. But Michigan's probably, it's like a silver, so it's pretty good. But some states are better than others.
Not really a thing where it pays off for the risk of picking a bunch of risky stocks.
I don't think you want to go out on a limb. But this sort of thing, as far as your grandchildren are concerned, that's a great gift. That's the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, though right? You can't roll it around on the ground like a cool car or something, you know.
When they're walking down the aisle someday getting there with their tassel and gown on, they'll be thankful when those student loans aren't as big. All right, next question.
All right, up next we have, I like this question. This is cool.
This is the one. This person put this question in specifically for me.
Yeah, right. No, they know their audience. I work in the construction industry, and I'm always trying to spread a little financial literacy to my coworkers. Whenever I see a young guy getting ready to drop $70,000 on a new pickup, I try to show them what that money could become if they invested in index funds instead. I like to call it sequence of spending risk. Of course, this rarely works, so I thought having experts comment could help. Maybe you could come up with a chart or graphic that could explain how delaying spending could have a big impact on future wealth.
I love the question because it hits on so many. I was born for this question, basically. Expensive trucks, compound interest, young people making terrible financial decisions. And I love the way that Jim put it here, the sequence of spending risk.
Right.
I don't want to spend shame people and say, you shouldn't buy this $70,000 truck. If you can afford it, fine. But especially when you're young, that makes a huge, huge difference, especially if you're not saving that much. So I've written a number of posts over the years about excessive spending on trucks and SUVs. So I asked if the Ford F-150 is partially responsible for the retirement crisis. I think I wrote a piece called like...
For people new here, Ben hates big vehicles and expensive vehicles. So an expensive truck is just like, that's the worst.
I don't hate them. I just hate them for certain people. All right? I'm not a fan of spend shaming unless you're spending way too much and you're not saving any money. This is
and if you take up too many parking spots.
Listen, the two biggest fixed expenses you have are housing costs and transportation for most people, right? It's not the lattes, it's not the brown bag lunches, it's not Netflix streaming services, it's the big expenses. And if you lock yourself into a 4-figure car payment for a truck because you want to be cool and it makes you feel better, I can't get on board with that. Okay, so I poked around a little bit and I found new car loan rates at like 6%, probably 6-7 depending on your FICO score. Financing a $70,000 truck, no down payment over 5 years at 6%, that's a monthly payment of $1,350. That's an obscene amount of money for young. I love the way that they frame this because they say young people, right? This is a person who's a little wiser, understands saving. They know that that's a ridiculously high monthly payment, especially for a young person because of the opportunity cost. So let's just say instead of that Ford F-150 or Dodge Ram, you got yourself a reasonably priced SUV, say like a Ford Explorer, Chevy Trailblazer. Now we're talking 30, 35 maybe. That cuts it in half. And let's be honest, if you're a young person, you don't need all the bells and whistles in a car. You don't need the sunroof. You don't need the leather seats. You don't need the heated steering wheels. Although heated steering wheel in Michigan in the winter, I got to say, is one of the best inventions of the past however long it's been around for. It's amazing.
I'm new to that life. Our new vehicle has heated steering wheel. I love it.
That's great. The thing is, once you get those things, that becomes a necessity, not a desire anymore. So once you get it, there's no going back. So just take away all the amenities at first, right? So if you cut it in half, go from 70 to 35, now we're talking like $675 a month in savings. It's $8,000 a year, $40,000 over the life of the loan. I also looked at what about a smaller truck? John, show a picture here before we get to this table. This is the Ford Maverick. Let's say, okay, listen, I'm in construction. I do need a truck, Ben. Okay, do you really need the biggest truck though? This is a Ford Maverick. You know what this MSRP is for the Ford Maverick? What it starts at? $25,000. Okay, monthly payment goes from $1,350 to $500 a month. Now I'll show my table, John. So I've shown 3 different options. The souped up truck, $1,350 a month. The SUV, $675 a month. Then the small truck at $2,500 or $25,000 for the truck and like $500 a month. You're saving $10,000 in a year and $51,000 over the life of the loan for a smaller truck, right? Now let's do the personal finance thing. Now, let's say you take these monthly savings, right, on both of these prices. You cut it in half or you cut it even further. Let's say you save 75% of monthly payments, right? Not the whole thing. You can blow the rest. Do whatever you want. You're a young person. Here's what those savings look like in the stock market over 30 years, 7%. On that, John, show the chart. Actually, give me the other chart, the next one. Okay, so this is what happens if you just keep that lower priced car and keep the spread for 30 years, right? You save that spread every year for 30 years. Now we're talking, high 6 figures, $600,000 to $800,000 range. Pretty eye-opening, right? But let's be honest. That's probably not realistic. If you're a big truck person, you're going to want a big truck eventually, regardless of what the spreadsheets say. So, John, show my next chart. What if you just save for the 5 years? So 25, you don't need that big souped-up truck. Get the Maverick. And then after 5 years, when you're 30, then you do it. So just you save the difference for 5 years, one period of the loan, right? Then you can buy your truck that'll pull a 747 down the runway, okay? This is just one-time deal. You save 75% of the difference for just 5 years and let it grow. Now we're talking about the difference between that SUV or a Ford Maverick, and you're saving something like $200,000, $250,000 over 30 years. This is the money chart, right? Just one loan period. So hold off on the big truck for 5 years. Drive a used car or a smaller truck or an SUV for 5 years, and then once you're in a better situation and maybe you're making more money, then you can get it, right? So that's the idea. These are the graphs that he should show as young people that, yeah, you fine, get it eventually. You don't need it now. Listen, I just think especially for young people, if you're someone who's saving money and you have your budget prioritized and you want that $70,000 truck, who am I to tell you not to get it? But if you're a young person, you're not saving, and you're not allowing compounding to do that heavy lifting for you, I say just, of course, the hard part is you can't simply buy a lower cost vehicle. You have to save the difference, right? So I would just automate those savings. A 6-figure Roth IRA in 30 years is going to do a lot more heavy lifting for you than a Ford F-150, right? Boom,
and
nailed
I've got to say, I'm not trying to trigger anyone, but I see a lot of fancy, expensive trucks, and they don't have a single scratch or a drop of mud on them. And I'm just saying, I don't really think you need a truck.
And this guy is in construction, and he's saying these other construction workers don't need it. You don't. Right. Not everyone needs the brand new top of the line. That's all I'm saying. Just do it for 5 years and let that money grow. And
these fancy trucks, they're nice. They're like luxury vehicles, like they're really fancy inside. I think a lot of people don't understand that. That's what you're paying a lot for in a lot of these cases, right?
Yes, you paying as much for a big truck as you are for a luxury vehicle. That's the thing. The payment is so huge. So I'm not saying scrimp for the rest of your life. Do it for at least the first one you get. Trade down a little bit, and let that money grow. Don't get used to it, because once you get used to it, there's no going back.
And just be okay with the fact that you might end up in a situation where you can't tow a train out of the way or something. And
that's true. Call one of your buddies who is not as financially sound as you. You can bail him out of a financial hole. He can bail you out of a literal hole.
There you go.
All right, next question.
Okay, up next we have a question from Sam. My wife is a physician, and we're 37, and we're in the 37% tax bracket. While Treasury yields are currently excellent, I'm struggling to figure out how Treasuries and bonds make sense for us in the near term, given the tax implications in a brokerage account. After taxes, 5% Treasuries would yield us about 3.1%, barely keeping up with inflation. Outside of pure safety, why wouldn't I just invest in an already safe index fund and enjoy the 7% annual gains and take the 20% capital gains rate, or just hold until we no longer have any income?
All right. A lot of tax stuff here. I want to tackle this from the investing side of things, but let's bring in not only your tax advisor, my tax advisor, Bill Sweet. We were on the phone today. Bill was working out some tax stuff for me.
I was.
He's a magician.
I'm always on the clock.
And
wanted to welcome you guys to the month of February, too. I think February is the worst month of the year, but it's an honest month because it's a month that doesn't hold up life any better than it really is. Where's at the top of your month power rankings? Duncan?
Yeah, it's definitely on the lower end.
Isn't it a leap year, though? It's a leap year. That's kind of cool.
It is. It's a long month, making it even worse. I would put May on the top and February at the bottom. That's my list.
This is the kind of stuff you talk about when you're a middle-aged dad.
For the audience, yeah, definitely.
Well, right, good thing they're not changing any tax laws late into the game.
Yeah,
or anything, right?
Yeah. There was not a bill that passed the House last night at 8:37 p.m. and the Senate's going to. And the crazy thing is it's retroactive, but that was not Sam's question here.
All right. Yeah, you're gonna have to give us a rundown of that eventually. I didn't quite get all the details, but. So I guess the way it works is your age matches your tax bracket according to Sam. Not really. We talked before about the differences in different types of bonds for tax purposes, right?
Yes.
The tax ramifications, muni bonds versus treasuries versus corporates, that sort of thing. Now we're looking at treasury bonds versus taxes. Mm-hmm. And you obviously know this, but make the case here for why stocks are so much of a better tax-deferred vehicle than bonds if we're investing in a brokerage account.
Yeah. So to put things into perspective, Sam and his wife, they're 37 to 37% tax bracket. That's the top tax bracket. So these are folks earning more than $600,000 a year. God bless them. There's a lot of work that goes into that.
So when he said my wife is a physician, that was not to brag.
Yeah, that was definitely not to brag in the tax bracket too. But the question Sam is kind of getting at is like, look, these treasury yields at 5%, they're really tasty, right? Like, gee, that compared to 2 years ago, compared to any point since 1985, 1987, that's a really good yield on a what the market considers a risk-free rate of return, right? A 30-day T-bill. However, what Sam's pointing out is like, look, my tax rate, the IRS is taking more than 1/3 of this income, right? And so his after-tax rate's only 3%. I would agree. And that happens across the tax spectrum, right? So for somebody, Ben, earning $50,000 a year, their ordinary income rate is 12%, their capital gains rate is 0. For somebody earning $150K, it's 22% ordinary, 15% capital gains. So there's still a 7% advantage there for capital gains. And even at higher income ranges, it goes from 37% to 24%, right? So you're still with a large 13% gap where you're getting a better effective tax rate on capital gains and things like tax qualified dividends over ordinary income. And so Sam is going down the right path. The real benefit, though, Ben, is not just in tax rates, but it's in deferral. So if you have
it's the compounding, right?
Correct. If you have a treasury that you're owning in a brokerage account, in a non-qualified account, you're paying that tax today in 2024 on that earnings relative to a capital gain that's getting deferred. I don't know, Ben, if it's exactly apples to apples, right? I don't know if you would compare a compound annual growth rate to a stock compared to a treasury yield. The treasury yield is basically guaranteed by the full faith and credit of the United States government, whereas we don't know what the next 5-10 years of stocks are going to yield. We do know the dividend rate, so we can approximate it. But that's really the big gap, is that really you get to defer on the tax versus paying the tax now.
Right, which is one of the reasons that those tax-deferred retirement vehicles are so nice. You have to pay the taxes eventually if it's not a Roth, but you're allowing the compounding to happen. You don't have to pay taxes on the dividends every year. You don't have to pay taxes if you rebalance, that sort of thing.
Yep.
So
You're
my
exactly
question,
right.
Yeah, my question is, how often do you let the tax tail wag the investment portfolio dog? Because I get that from a taxable perspective. Stocks look way better, but does that mean that you should just shun bonds altogether because the yields are going to be lower on an after-tax basis, and you go 100% stocks? I don't know. I think the investing, side of the equation should probably have a say here too. Correct?
Yeah, 100%. In fact, that's probably the end of this story. And that's how I would argue it through. Sam, I would look at, hey, this is an investment opportunity. I'm going to own this. Like, think about top-down asset allocation. And Ben, you and I do this for a living. You would fail your CFP or CFA exam if you tried to, hand jam based on where the current interest rates are. You would decide, look, I want to own treasuries, right? I want to own stocks. Where does it make sense to own those? And I think what I would flip the argument on his head, Sam, is say, look, it would make more sense for me if I have a high income, which Sam and his wife do, and I'm earning income, I'm rebalancing, blah, blah, blah. I would want to own ordinary income devices in tax-deferred accounts, right? Because the yields are great. We want to own that somewhere. But you want that in a tax-deferred structure anyway, because then you get the higher yields in a tax-deferred account versus owning stocks and other tax-qualified assets in non-qualified accounts where you don't have to pay the tax now because of the deferral outside of dividends, and then you can pick and choose when you want to pay your tax. So think about this top-down from a portfolio allocation, not bottom-up from this is a good investment.
And also, when do you need to spend the money? If it's just, some people need to own bonds or cash because it's an emotional hedge, and they can't stand they can't take the volatility of the stock market, so they need to have something else that takes that volatility down a notch. Other people, it's more for spending needs. And do you have goals coming up that you need to spend that money? So I have money in an online savings account and some T-bills, and I know that stuff is not nearly as tax efficient, and it's not going to give me the same return over the long run as the stock market, but I don't care because it's there when I need to spend the money. That's what you have to think about first is that money going to be there when I need to spend it?
Yep, and you skipped to the point that I wanted to end on, which is these types of vehicles are great if you're spending your money today, right? If you're in distribution phase, you want this high yield, you want this high income, because the dollars are going out the door anyway. You probably do not want this type of income if you have a high savings rate, right?
Right, yeah. He calls index funds safe, but it's relative. They're still risky in the short term for sure.
Correct. And final point for me, you do get a state tax advantage with treasuries, as we discussed on Ask the Compound 92.
Right. Was that a real number or did you just make it up?
I just made it up. Totally.
Okay, I was about to say, wow, that's a good memory.
You got me. You guys are supposed to play along.
Close enough. All right, next question.
All right, up next we have a question from Benjamin. I'm considering maxing out 401k and IRA contributions for my wife and I. My employer contributes to an ESOP. You're going to have to remind me what that stands for.
Employee stock option plan.
That's it. And profit sharing programs as well. I have a coworker who claims there's a maximum amount of contributions for deferred compensation and tax advantage retirement accounts. Consequently, he avoids contributing to his IRA in case his total contributions end up being too high when combined with 401k, ESOP, profit sharing, and other deferred comp programs the company has for high earners. Is there any such maximum?
See, Bill, I always complain about this to you, that we should just have one big pooled maximum for everyone. But there's all these different accounts and moving pieces and 401k limits and IRA limits, and then there's income limits on the IRAs, and then you have SEP IRAs and individual 401ks and employee stock option plans. Okay, so who's right here, Benjamin or the coworker? Because I feel like you have to settle that debate first.
Yeah, I think so. And I want to talk about a really interesting policy proposal kind of at the end. But I think the answer to Benjamin's question is it's super duper complex. I think that's where we would land this. Duncan, ESOP is an employee stock ownership plan. And in these types of things, integrated with a 401k plan, there are a bunch of limits to keep in mind. Limit number one, there's a $23,000 402G salary deferral limit that each person can put into a 401k each year. And then there's a $69,000 this year 415C limit. And those are the interplay between those two limits is very, very important. The 415, the $69,000, that is a hard cap, Ben. You cannot exceed that on a per employee basis, or you have to distribute the money to the employee's benefit. And ESOPs, an employee stock ownership plan, is this really funky hybrid of equity, company stock, and retirement vehicles. And the total company contributions cannot exceed that $69,000, which also includes the 402G salary deferral limit. So the employee is correct. You kind of do need to know this stuff in advance. Unfortunately, most companies don't close their books until the following tax year. You're right, when it's too late to do a 402G limit. My general advice would be contribute up to the maximum anyway, because the company's going to match it or not. You're just going to get the money back if it's too much. But I do want to give Ben a point here at the end, and that's the IRA limits don't have anything to do with these complicated 402, 415C limits. So the IRA's got nothing to do with it in my equation.
Right. And so if we're doing IRA plus 401k plus the SEP limit, we're pushing 100K.
Yeah.
And that's not including any company match for the 401k.
If you balance it all together, right? And just very confusingly, a SEP IRA doesn't follow the IRA rules. It does for distribution purposes, but not for contribution purposes. So you're even bringing a third animal into this.
It's kind of crazy to me that they give business owners such a bigger break on the contribution limits. Why is it so much higher? Is this just who knows?
Yeah, I don't have a good answer. I think it's just the way that the tax code developed over time, and these limits were much, much smaller. And as they've compounded in inflation and Congress has tried to incentivize retirement savings, they've gotten bigger, right?
But speaking of inflation, that's been a positive inflation as these contribution limits have moved up quite a bit in the last few years, right?
That's true. Fair point. Yeah, and especially if you compound it over the last 20. But at the end of the day, I think I would look at this all in, again, totality and say, look, what can I control here? You can control your own savings rate. You probably should fund the retirement vehicle. And don't let that door close. And again, in the worst case scenario, your company contributes $69,000 to a retirement account on your behalf. That's a great problem to have. You're just going to take the $23K out, get a distribution, and then spend it as you see fit. I think that's a great problem to have. Personally.
Okay, that's what I was about to ask you. Whose job is it to keep track of this? Is the employer issuing this, keeping track of limits, or you just as the individual have to keep track of all this?
Yeah, no, the plan sponsor would, Duncan. The plan sponsor, whoever's running the plan, and yeah, there are some very high income people who get paid to do all this math and to give you the answer.
And the reason people want to max these things out if they can is because of the tax deferral we talked about in the last question.
Correct. Yep. So it's a big deal, and it's a good problem to have. But yeah, I would fund your IRA separate from any of this, because IRAs they don't come into this company limits.
Perfect.
Right. Good to know.
All right. Next one.
Cool.
Okay, so last but not least, we got a nice short one. We have a 9-year-old and a 6-month-old. Do I need 2 individual 529 accounts for them? Since they are pretty far apart, I was wondering if we can use the same account for both of them.
All right, this is a quick answer, so you do give it, and then I got a follow-up for you.
Yeah, shoot. So the answer is, yeah, you can just use the same account during the accumulation phase, and you can name one beneficiary. 529s have an account owner that owns the account, and then they're making contributions and saving for a beneficiary. And most 529s plans allow you to change the name of that beneficiary at least once a year. And so in theory, during the accumulation phase, Ben, let's say the first 18 years of a child's life, you can contribute to one 529 and then split the account, do a rollover, rename the beneficiary to the second beneficiary, and then start distributing there, or just use one account for your full needs if that's what you really
I will say
really
I actually used different accounts for each kid because it was just psychologically easier for me. So I could bucket them out.
Yeah, and then you don't have to pick and choose, who you love more, right, and which name goes in the account. But I'll tell you
By the way, Bill, was that 2 Live Crew on your phone right there? What the?
I tried to mute my phone during
like
the
a
call because
YouTube
I noticed I got a
flag to me.
notification, and it started rapping at me. So that's New York for you.
I have a follow-up for you. So on Animal Spirits this week, we were looking at college tuition. John, throw it up here. And over the past 10 years, college tuition has actually lagged the overall inflation rate. It just it really flipped recently, but that's surprising to a lot of people who have seen college prices go up and up and up, and it's finally starting to roll over a bit. So Michael, my co-host on the show, said, wait a minute, what if I'm actually saving too much in my 529 plans for my boys? Is that a problem? And I said, well, as Bill Sweet would say, you can eventually convert them to Roth IRAs if you don't spend it all, correct?
Yep, correct. Up to $35,000 per beneficiary, correct. Yep.
With his FanDuel account, I mean, does he really even need a 529? That's
true.
I think he's doing pretty well.
They don't have a Roth IRA option for FanDuel.
But I did want to sneak in, most 529 planned accounts are per contribution, but some are per beneficiary. And so, Ben, that would be one reason in the state of Georgia at $2,000 per beneficiary, you get a higher tax deduction if you do that on a, like I said, per beneficiary basis. Taxpayers in Maine, Ohio, Oklahoma, Virginia, Wisconsin, among others, would potentially benefit from having multiple 529s if they have multiple kids.
Okay. All right. I have one follow-up for you on the tax stuff.
Yes,
More
sir.
gets going to come out, but what's like the biggest two or three big points of the new tax legislation that passed last night that will like make sense for people?
Yeah, for individual taxpayers, to be honest, Ben, not a lot, particularly if your income exceeds, let's say, $50,000 or $100,000, because most of the individual changes had to do with refundable child tax credits. So if you have a child and you're slightly lower income, you get a higher tax refund potentially. Most of the changes on the business side had to do with bonus depreciation and R&D credits, and they're relatively wonky. It's not a headline in my view. But the headline for me is that why is Congress mucking with the tax code retroactively to 2023 in the month of February? That would mean to be the question of potential dysfunction. People are filing tax returns right now. So I guess just as a policy question, why are we doing this a year after the fact?
It is crazy. There's no line in the
confusing to me.
sand on this stuff that you can go backwards.
Yeah, well, Congress makes the laws around here.
How are
so-
tax professionals like you supposed to plan ahead if you're changing the rules after the fact?
I mean, that's the thing. And they continue to cut IRS funding, frankly, and that might be a political priority for some. But what it means for the rest of us is it's more difficult to file a tax return. You're right, Ben. If you've filed a tax return already, there might be some additional refunds that you won't be touching for 6 to 8 weeks because Congress is mucking with the tax code very, very late in the year. So we'll see how this all lands out. It's going to be the Senate, and then it needs to get signed by the president to law. But yeah, this is a moving target, and you get it live here in Ask the Compound.
Also, on the topic of taxes for our new people here and young people here, I find a lot of people don't understand that you can still be contributing to an IRA for 2023 this far into 2024.
I
that's correct.
just topped off my SEP IRA for 2023 this month.
That's great.
So look into
Not
that.
to brag, Ben Carlson.
Retroactively, yes.
Yeah, but yeah, April 15th is the IRA contribution limit for tax year 2023. And you're right, Duncan.
Wow,
if
we
your
got
income's
so
in a
much more
certain range.
time.
But that means if you put a 2023 contribution in now, you get 2023 stock market returns too.
Not quite. Unfortunately, yeah. Time machine. We're still working on that. Can I get a ruling on you guys? Non-alcoholic beer during the day. Is that a no, or is that how does that land for you
I
guys?
love it.
I'm just
I
curious.
walked by the NA section in the store this morning, and it's getting bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Yeah. I don't know. What
Guinness
does
is
it
still
say
my
about
favorite.
me? That's what I'm curious about for you guys.
I mean, you're
I
going to
think
get
it
judged
says-
because people think it's real, but
Yeah, it's kind of edgy. You know, it's
Yeah.
kind of like,
I live on the edge.
yeah, I like it.
We're changing the tax code this week, guys. I'm living on the edge.
all right. Yeah, sure. Have at it.
I approve.
I don't know. All right. Thanks to Bill Sweet, as always, for being our resident tax
It's good to see you in
expert.
New York this week, Ben.
It was fun. I was in New York for a couple days. Got to
An
hang out with
extra
these guys
day.
live and in person. New Compound and Friends tomorrow. Remember, email us, askthecompoundshow@gmail.com. Thanks for all the people in the live chat, as always. And leave us a comment or question in YouTube. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we will see you next time.
See you, everyone.